Hello everybody, welcome back. CVM here with
Boonsader.
with BBD, and we've got an awesome green-white deck for you. Basically, it's just the old standby, like 30 guys, 7 spells that also make guys, and we're just going to attack a lot. Let's take a look at it. So the green-white deck was something that was championed by Craig Wesco at the Pro Tour. He did very well with it, and this isn't like a direct port from it, but I basically just took all the undercosted awesome creatures and put it in one giant goulash, and we're gonna see how it works.
Delicious.
So we have Experiment 1, which grows with just about every creature in the deck, and Elvish Mystic to help ramp us into some of the awesome undercosted high power creatures. The only just like normal creature in the deck I would say is like Scavenging Ooze. Like he's just like just a vanilla 2/2 for 2 that happens to get bigger later on. There's not a whole lot of graveyard interaction now with Innistrad leaving, but with a lot of creatures in our deck, they're all going to be dying a lot, and on like turn 5 or 6, he can be giant.
Yeah, like he can easily end up being the biggest creature in this deck.
Definitely. Now we do have Voice of Resurgence, the old standby. There's not a lot of counter spells, I think, that are going to be played, but it makes them play on their turn instead of ours, as well as, if they happen to get rid of it, we get a giant elemental token. The only downside is Anger of the Gods does just exile it, so I don't get an elemental. But what are you going to do? You can't play around one card and not play one of the best cards from the last format.
Exactly. Yeah, like you don't want to be not playing Voice because of Anger, and then you get paired up against like the mono red guy, and you're like, well, Voice would be an easy 2-for-1 here.
Definitely. Now we do have one of the new cards, Fleecemane Lion. So this card got quite a bit of hype when everything was spoiled, and this is the first time that we're playing a green-white deck in the video. So it's the first chance we're getting to play with it for you guys on camera. But I'm really excited to play the creature. So it's green-white for a 3/3, which we've seen many times before. Watch Wolf Call the Conclave. But this also has additional ability. So it gets to Monstrous for 3 green-white. And as long as it's monstrous, it gets a +1/+1 counter, and it has hexproof and indestructible. So only cards like Devour Flesh, half of Far and Away can actually answer it, and it can all be done in instant speed to protect it from like a Supreme Verdict or an Anger of the Gods. I think it's going to be a very, very powerful card.
Yeah, I agree very much with that. The monstrosity ability, growing to a 4/4 isn't that big. It's just the fact that it's very difficult to remove from play that becomes so huge. Like any kind of a blue-white deck is going to struggle with a monstrous Fleecemane Lion unless they're also playing like Far and Away or Devour Flesh or anything like that.
Definitely. And even when our opponents have Devour Flesh or Far and Away, we have like all these random 1/1s. We have Boonsader, Celestia Charm, Advent the Worm. We can all make it, creatures at instant speed to help protect it and just ride that lion to victory.
I will say one thing. It is a lifelong goal of mine now to Detention Sphere a non-monstrous Fleecemane Lion and get a monstrous one as well.
That'd be pretty sweet.
Yeah.
That would be pretty sweet. Now, another new card we have is Boonsader. I actually feel like this card is pretty underrated. BB and I both think it's one of the best cards in the set after playing with it a little bit. It was in the green-red deck. I'm excited to play with it in this deck, but being an instant speed split card that gives you either a 4/2 or gives you +4/+2 and then a 4/2 later. It's just really, really awesome.
Yeah, it really is. And it also like is a 4 power for Experiment 1 too. Along with Smiter, it's another way to like bump your Experiment 1 up pretty high.
Yeah.
And yeah, just the fact that you can pass with 5 mana up and your opponent has to respect Boonsader, Celestia Charm, and Advent of the Worm. Like for a 30 dude 7 spell deck, that's pretty good to be able to have like those kinds of interactions.
Definitely. And then we have Loxodon Smiter, just good old country 4/4 for 3. If I ever get Rakdos Return and throw it down, it's a pretty good day. I don't think it's going to happen very often. Plus the Leon is gone, so I don't have to worry about it. But even still, I can play it on turn 2 against the other aggressive decks. It's just bigger than anything else. I really wouldn't want to leave home without it in a green-white deck. And then we get another new-ish card in Witchstalker. So when M14 came out, I threw it in a Bant Hexproof deck. We played it in a video, and I said the card sucked and I didn't want to play it again in the deck. That's just because Fiendslayer Paladin was just going to end up being better with that strategy. But in this deck, I think that it's much better, primarily because of Boonsader.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you can Boonsader your Witchstalker, or you can Celestia Charm it, which causes it to dodge Anger of the Gods. And beyond that card, Supreme Verdict or Edict effects, it's very hard for your opponent to kill Witchstalker.
Definitely.
So yeah, I think there's a lot going for it there. Like
Plus, it can come down on turn 2 with Elvish Mystic, which is a lot of resilient pressure.
Yeah, and another awesome thing too is like with Unflinching Courage in the sideboard, that can be a pretty awesome, like, put a Courage on it, you don't have to worry about your opponent killing it, and you just ride that to victory. Yeah,
against like any random mono green deck, or even in like the mirror, like I have a 5/5 Witchstalker, you can have all your Loxodon Smiters, I'll just keep attacking and killing them.
How are those 3 Celestia Charms in your hand doing? So.
Exactly. And then we have Celestia Charm. There's no more Thundermaw to get rid of, but there are still Advent tokens. You can pump guys to push damage through. You know, it's one of the only ways for this deck to effectively pressure an Elspeth once they actually happen to get Elspeth into play. So I think that Celestia Charm is just going to be a perfect standby. And then Advent of the Worm, you know, just instant speed 5/5.
Yeah, that card's like a complete dicking against a lot of decks. So
it's pretty good.
One thing I will say about Celestia Charm is the Godfather himself, Obsidizi, is still in the format, and along with Desecration Demon, I think both of those cards are going to see a lot of play.
And all of the gods are at least 5 power. Happens to get rid of them if they happen to turn them on.
Yep. Sometimes you can be like, hey, I hope you turn your Porphyros on, so
exactly.
I can get rid of that guy.
All right, Boros Reckoner's sweet. Get rid of your god. Attack you and you're dead. Then we just have a bunch of lands. We don't have the Scry lands yet for Celestia, unfortunately. We just get to play the good old country guild gates. And then we got Temple Gardens and a bunch of basics. So that's it. Really, it's just a bunch of guys. Some resilient, some fat, got some tricks. Really just good old Magic.
I'm not sure I'm really too pleased with the country. Like, it's just Smiters and guild gates and stuff. That doesn't sound too appealing to me. I don't know.
Definitely. So this is the main deck for the green-white deck. Let's go ahead and take a look at the sideboard and see what spicy options we have. All right, welcome back for the sideboard for the green-white deck. So let's take a look at some of the cards that we've got. I've got a couple Pithing Needles. I really like it as an answer to just primarily Planeswalkers. Like Jace, I feel, is fairly good against the deck. I don't really know if I'd want it against Chandra, but definitely I'd want it against anything with Elspeth, because Elspeth is just very, very good. Like, all of the modes are going to be relevant. So primarily for Jace and Elspeth, but I imagine there's also just a slew of other cards that it'll actually end up being good against. Stops Monstrous, stops all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, like usually if you're going to board in Pithing Needle against the deck, there's a number of things you're going to hit with it, even if it's not like what you boarded in specifically for.
Yeah, for sure. Banisher Priest is just for like the other aggro mirror decks, like getting rid of their Loxodon Smiters or Boros Reckoners or just anything that's going to let me keep attacking. Also relevant for us is this is an answer for Soldier of the Pantheon. Is that what it's called? The 2-mana or the 1-mana 2/1?
Yes.
So like we have a lot of gold creatures with Fleecemane Lion, Voice of Resurgence, etc., etc. And this is a way to get rid of it so we can continue to attack. It does a very good job blocking even though it's a 1-mana creature, but this allows us to stay aggressive against them.
Yeah, it's a very good point.
We also have Unflinching Courage and Tristani to come in against the other aggressive decks. I also think Tristani might be good in like attrition matchups, being able to populate worm tokens and voice elemental tokens as well. You know, will probably end up being better than just like a random creature that can only attack against decks like that have a lot of removal.
Yeah, I agree with that. From playing a lot of black, red, white in block constructed, I found green-white was like my hardest matchup, and the reason was primarily because of Tristani and Advent of the Worm. So I could deal with like an Advent token, but I couldn't always deal with like 6 of them. So
definitely. We also have Rootborn Defenses against the Supreme Verdict decks. A lot of times, if you get to cast it when they try and wrath you, they're just actually dead the following turn when you get to populate something. And even if you don't get to populate something, it's still fine as far as like saving all your guys from a Supreme Verdict, or even Anger of the Gods, if you will.
Yeah, like even something like just like saving like a couple of Fleecemane Lions so you can go monstrous with them isn't that bad.
Definitely. Then we have Glare of Heresy. The primary targets for this card are going to end up being Elspeth, the new Elspeth, Chained to the Rocks, opposing Loxodon Smiters or Voice of Resurgence, as well as Boros Reckoners. It's also just another answer to Soldier of the Pantheon, whereas we're just going to want Glare against those types of decks. It also consequently hits cards like Heliod and Spear of Heliod, which I feel like would be pretty good against us Spear as far as like just being an anthem for them, and if we're pushing through damage, they can just kill our creatures at will, and this gives us a way to handle it.
Yeah, especially if you're putting stuff like Unflinching Courage on your guys, the Spear can be like, yeah, pretty rough to get through. Like you might hit them a couple times, but if it's not good enough to finish them off, then You know.
Absolutely. Glaire's also very good against other unflinching Courage decks. So let's say they have a Witch Stalker that they put a Courage on. We can Glaire the Courage if we need to, so to stop them from gaining life, whereas we just wouldn't be able to kill the Witch Stalker. We can still get rid of the enchantment.
Yeah, and then, like a Witch Stalker by itself, I mean, it's just not for me. So, yeah.
Yeah, it just runs into my Smiters. So that is the sideboard for the green-white deck. I'm really excited to play the deck. I feel like this type of strategy is very apparent in the format, which is why we waited a little longer than normal to play it in the videos, because like the deck just kind of builds itself. So we wanted to try and play something a little new in the first couple videos to show off some of the cards. But now that the full spoiler is out, the set is out, you're able to get the cards now here on this Friday, and we're playing this deck just to see if it's any good. Maybe you want to play it for FNM.
Yeah, I agree. Like I think this is, yeah, exactly. It's one of the strategies that is pretty apparent, but that doesn't mean it's not good. I think it's also very good.
Definitely. So let's see how the games go.